The 1960s counterculture movement was a social movement of expression. This youth movement rejected the suburban conformity designed by their parents. The 1960s youth became synonymous with the hippie lifestyle, though less than 10% of teenagers were actually a part of it. The movement fostered new attitudes about drugs and sex, and innovation in food, fashion, and music. This era produced the first music of the Beatles and Bob Dylan, and with bands like the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, and The Doors, a new wave of psychedelic rock was born in the Haight-Ashbury section of San Francisco, California. The era was defined by this movement of protesting youths. The 1960s saw a continuance of the 1950s Beat Generation literary movement, who, through their writings, promoted anti-conformist attitudes and ideals. Many of the central Beat Generation authors were openly homosexual, and their explicit sexual descriptions were the focus of United States obscenity trials. The Beat Generation were so called because they described themselves as tired or beaten down. They came to be known as beatniks, which combined the term Beat Generation with the recently launched Russian Sputnik. The latter was included because Sputnik was far out of mainstream society. These are the primary motivations for writers in the 1960s.
The book was written in 1962 during the counterculture movement. The Communist Party of the Soviet Union was at its peak. Through the character McMurphy, Kesey discusses individuality against conformity, which corresponded well to the U.S.'s opposition against communism and totalitarian regimes. The underlying criticism directed at the U.S. government also reflected the countercultural conception of rebellion against authority. The illusions the patients go through, whether due to illness or medical drugs, mirror the alternative methods of perception incited through drugs like LSD. The big nurse is essentially the authority rebelled against, which could symbolize the government or parents. Many of the patients expressed that they were tired or scared, a common trait of the 1960 hippies who felt a certain lack of purpose in their lives. Loosely moral acts, such as gambling and smoking, were prevalent through the ward just as they were rampant throughout the counter-revolution. Today, instead of protesting war or materialism, counterculture is reduced to non-mainstream fashion trends, which is ironic because of the conformity inherent in trends. For example, counterculture's remnants are manifest through the emo genre, which often encourages self-mutilation as a means of self-expression and displays depression as fashionable. The punk genre started out with good intentions. In the 80s, their main intentions were in politics, to protest against anti-capitalism, racism, and sexism. However, they have diluted into mere fashion and music and a skewed view of rebellion as a popular way to express oneself, even if it's without a cause.